Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. I thought I would share another set of encounters here, this time from a Facebook group. One that I saw a couple of years back that I decided to do a screenshot of and I'm sharing here. It comes from a group called the Texas Bigfoot Research Center. And when I saw this information, I realized I'm going to definitely share it one of these days. It took a couple of years, but I finally decided to go ahead and showcase it here. But yes, it involves the world of Bigfoot. Obviously an all-star within the universe of cryptids. Definitely one of the most beloved ones out there. So I'm going to share two of them here, give my own thoughts and opinions on them. One of them is a little bit longer than the other one, but the other one is still definitely good to share. And then let me know what you guys and gals think too. So this first one has to do with an encounter apparently there in Greenville, Texas, somewhere there towards Commerce, Texas as well. So let's go ahead and let's share this encounter here, and then I'll share the other one right after. So here's what they state. This was reported in another group. Okay, my peeps, here goes encounter number one. In 1986, at around 2:30, I was halfway home from 15-mile drive between Greenville, Texas, and my home just north of Commerce, Texas, after practicing with my rock band all night. The road was dark except for my headlights. As I approached the first of bridges spanning both forks in the Sabine River, I saw someone walking in the same direction I was traveling, but on the other side of the road. Now, this area was known for packs of coyotes, and I decided to stop and offer this person a lift. Not smart, I know. And so I hand cranked the window down on my 75 Monte Carlo as I pulled next to this person, and that's when I realized it was a Bigfoot. While still walking, it turned and looked at me. Its face turned into a menacing, angry scowl and immediately turned and began crossing the road towards me. The guttural growl shook me to the core, and I put the accelerator on the floor. What happened next was the most horrific thing I have ever experienced. I felt a weight on my car. It had actually jumped on my car, and it was still there. Now, I think I screamed out a couple of expletives, and I remember repeating, oh God, a few times. When I looked in the rearview mirror, all I saw was blackness. And so I kept speeding up until the weight left my car at 50 miles per hour. It had jumped off. And so I kept accelerating for about a mile, then thought I should turn around for another look. That lasted about half a second before deciding, screw that, and so I kept going. I got home, slipped into my bed next to my sleeping wife, and stared at the ceiling until dawn, wide awake. After I finished telling my wife what had happened, I went outside and looked at my car. There were dents on the trunk and the roof. My wife thought I had made up the story to explain wrecking the car. I asked how in the heck did I wreck a car and have damage on top but nowhere else. She didn't believe me, which was the beginning of the end of our marriage. When I tell you seeing Bigfoot had changed my life, I really mean it. Now, we had 2 kids together. Do you know that to this day, no one in my family believes that it happened? Okay, but I will go to the grave knowing that it did. This Bigfoot was easily 8 feet tall and more thinly built than my giant friend in Alaska. It was covered in almost completely light gray hair and was the meanest, angriest, bone-chilling creature I have ever seen. I never had a dream about the Alaska Bigfoot, but had nightmares for years over this one. I'm much more hesitant about sharing this one because just telling it is just unbelievable to me, but as God as my witness, it happened. Then that's it. That's everything from this user. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. Now, I had to first check to see where Commerce, Texas is. I had heard of it before, but it was one of those passing towns mentioned somewhere. And so I looked it up again. It's located at the northeastern area of Dallas. So if you're heading north, take east, and then just a little bit more, and then you'll get over there to Commerce, Texas. It's one of those towns that just pockets the surrounding areas around Dallas. Lots of towns actually around Dallas altogether, tiny ones. So I imagine such is the case here. So that leads to this story and why it would happen to this guy. So there he was at 2:30 a.m. and then basically driving home from what he was saying was practicing with his rock band, and then realizing that he saw someone walking in the road and not wanting this person to face what he knew as packs of coyotes out there. Again, tying into the remote location of the of Commerce, Texas, he decided to give them a lift. But then that's when he realized too little too late that it was a Bigfoot. What was interesting about this story is that apparently he had an encounter with an Alaskan Bigfoot, if you can. Like he claimed it was an Alaskan Bigfoot. It could have been a Yeti. Who knows? I don't know about that story. But either way, he said that it looked nothing like it, and he never had nightmares like that Alaskan Bigfoot. But instead, this creature, whatever it was, he definitely changed his life. In fact, this is the first time I've ever heard of a Bigfoot encounter leading to the end of a marriage, because when all was said and done and he told his wife about it, she didn't believe him. And so she in turn, I guess, didn't trust him afterwards on things with what happened to his car, maybe other things. But either way, they ended up divorcing. That's a first when it comes to these type of stories. But either way, he said that he realized what it was and then tried to speed away, but it actually jumped on his car, almost like the T-1000 from the Terminator 2 film. It jumped on the vehicle and then stayed on it because he felt the weight of it. And then he started to go as fast as he could, or at least accelerate as fast as he could. Went up to 50 miles an hour. And then that's when he realized that it had either jumped off or had been thrown off. And just for a split second, he decided to see what had happened. But he smartly realized, no, he wasn't going to take that chance, and then just sped all the way home, presumably to never ever run into this Bigfoot again. The only descriptions really, though, that he could say about this Bigfoot was that it was 8 feet tall. It was thinly built, but that it has the nastiest scowl associated with it. Like it was something involving just a nightmare of sorts. And it had a guttural growl as he expanded on it too. Whatever it was that it was making a noise, it definitely shook him to the core. It also had this light gray hair, and it had a bone-chilling look, angry look associated too. This was not something that you wanted to run across necessarily. So definitely interesting stuff all around with this encounter. Goes to show that even the tiny towns there, like Commerce, Texas, will have these type of encounters. That area too is prone to Bigfoot sightings. I know stuff involving on the eastern side up towards the north side of Texas tend to have more of those associations of encounters. Next one is a smaller one. Again, smaller encounter, but I'm going to share it here. This is what it says. It says, so when I was 7, a Bigfoot visited my grandma's house in Conroe. It was pitch black and only porch lights on, and so he came up to the window, sniffed us, and then pushed on the trailer. Not violently, but enough to move stuff off of the shelves and tables. He had to be 8 feet tall. When he looked in the window, I could see the top half of his face, and there was fur and hair on his face. He didn't look as much like an ape as I've heard in my whole life, so I just had to share. He looked more like a feline. Now, the smell was horrible. Sulfur, mud, and feces. I know it wasn't a hoax. My uncle and cousin were in the room with me. All of the adults were out. The fur was a medium brown, full of twigs and leaves. We heard grunts and opened the curtains, and he was there. He even pushed on the side of the manufactured home. Now, the manufactured home was raised at least 4 feet off the ground in the back. Nothing under the window to stand on, and this happened back in 86 or 87. I've never wanted to share this story, or I've always wanted to share the story for a long time. I've shared it with my family, and they laughed it off, and friends who think that I'm crazy. Even my husband doubts me, but I swear on my grandma's grave that it happened. Elaborating on the facial hair, it didn't have a skin face. It was covered in fur/hair. I saw it and I smelt it. Thank you for listening to me. Have a great day. Then that's it. That's everything from this encounter, so let's talk about that here. Great little story, isn't it? In this case, it happened there in Conroe, Texas. Now, Conroe, I have been around at least once. Conroe is located near Houston, Texas, but a little bit north of it. I passed it one time when I was traveling over to Huntsville, and I was staying there for a ghost hunt. And I believe there was a second time when I was there for a ghost hunt of another sorts, but actually near and around Conroe, Texas in this case. So Conroe, Texas, another tiny little town, a tiny town, just probably a couple thousand people at most. But even then, they still experience this. But how about that? We have a sneaking Bigfoot. In this case, one of them, almost like a peeping Tom, that is looking directly into a manufactured home. They stated that this occurred back in 1986, 1987, and I could just imagine it just as visually as the user was actually writing it. So this thing, whatever it was, this Bigfoot went right up to that window and then started looking in. They could tell, as I mentioned in some of the past videos, that this was a unique creature because of the smell associated with it. Not only was it very, very tall, 8 feet tall, enough for it to be able to just look into the window of that manufactured home, but also the fact that it was 4 feet off the ground and it was still able to peer in showed how tall it was, but also it gave off that very, very strong smell. They described it as being sulfur, mud, and feces. This, again, I have talked about in the past. So yeah, this intrusive Bigfoot was just basically there looking inside the window. Didn't really do much though. All it was almost like inspecting what was happening there. Whoever this user was had other witnesses there too. They described them as being their uncle and their cousin, but then they all saw this creature. The most that they could describe, besides it being really tall, was the fact that it had a medium brown fur, but it was full of twigs and leaves, which is indicative of it having traveled so much, I guess, in the forest throughout its lifestyle. Otherwise, he heard some grunts, and then this thing, whatever it was trying to open the curtains, and then that was it. There was really not much encounter associated with it. It just decided to peer in to the window itself of this manufactured home, sniff the area, and then try to see if there was stuff there to look inside. Maybe it was curious, or maybe it just wanted to interact with something, but then it left altogether. You never really hear about much more violent encounters like with other cryptids out there in terms of Bigfoot. Maybe they'll chase some people, but you never really hear them do too much harm to people altogether. I mean, the previous encounter that I just talked about showed this thing almost trying to chase whoever that user was, but maybe it was more involving the lines of territory. It was within the territory the human was of this Bigfoot, and so it wanted to chase them out. That was at least my theory. But otherwise, let me know what you guys and gals